so they can control every Palestinian who came in, who can come and visit the city and pray in the mosques and the churches of the old city of Jerusalem. But the people mobilized themselves and they organized a kind of sit-in for around 2 weeks, and they succeeded, and Israel removed all the electronic gates from that. And this also reflected the power of the nonviolent resistance in a way. When it comes to the people and the voices of the people, they are able to achieve something. And that is a message not only for the Palestinians. I mean, in similar contexts, people can use their power in order to bring the change that they want, even in situations of power, asymmetric situation like the Palestinian-Israeli situation, where the Palestinians haven't the power the same as the Israeli government, but they are able to achieve something. Now, in front of all of this situation, if we move to this next slide, people start to think again that we have the legacy through our history. Since the 20s, women, men, farmers, workers were organizing themselves. So why not to organize ourselves in a way that we can benefit from our legacy and of nonviolent resistance, of the popular resistance, and benefiting from our experience. And then wherever, for example, the wall passes from a village, the people start to form popular committees. And these popular committees are grassroots committees from the people, from the farmers, from the students, from the people who are affected by the wall, by the settlements, and so on. So such popular committees came as a group of activists together from the communities who knows the problems of the people, who also are directly affected by what is happening. So there are different interests about the formation and establishment of the popular committees. Sometimes you find the people are affected directly by the wall, by the settlements, by the Israeli policies. I mean by that, like a farmer whose land has been confiscated. So they get motivated because it's my personal interest that you are touching my land, you are coming to my house to demolish my house. Or others who have the experience, I mean, who experienced the first Intifada. So there is also a collective interest in the way that people come together to work. And most importantly, the intergeneration, I mean, the people who are from the first Intifada, who witnessed also the second Intifada, and now they can see hope from this bottom-up approach and the grassroots movements on the ground. And when these committees came across many villages, they start to grow up to another level, like umbrellas, which is a kind of social movement establishment. It's not that frame of social movement, but it's a kind of umbrellas to network these popular committees together in order to share resources, in order to facilitate the work of the popular committees, to support them. But this also helped to take the struggle from these local communities to a national struggle, to a higher level where it touched higher level against the occupation. However, when we reach this national level, I would say, we start talking about national strategies. What kind of strategy these grassroots movements are able to do when they partially succeed on the ground uh, they face the divisions among the liberation movements and the lack of strategy, the national strategy, which I say I can confirm that inhibits the spread of the movement in Palestine. So that's why unity, diversity, independency, transparency, structure are needed for movements in order to be able to lead the struggle of people living under foreign occupation, even for social movements who are looking for reforming something or changing a social situation. We need these essential, let's say, strategies in order to achieve our goals. Otherwise, you will be in a circle of actions that will not lead to a tangible change that you are looking at. Which, I mean, in the Palestinian case, these localities of struggle in these communities uh, succeeded, I would say, in changing the routes of the wall, in gaining the land again. But this is a local struggle. If it comes to a national struggle, then another level of strategy needed, and because there will be threats, there will be challenges on another level, that these movements, these committees can be co-opted, can be repressed, can be controlled. And also, you know, that especially in a context where you are facing foreign occupation, or I would say, because there is a difference in the way that movements are working and power holders are working. So in this situation, we have to pay attention. What kind of strategy, what kinds of tactics we have to use in order to have the sustainability of these committees, of these movements. And this movement, I would say, the movements against the wall and the settlements, now it's 20 years old, but there is a kind of waving in mobilization, like waving and organizing the protest, the frequency of the project of the protests and demonstrations. So these are challenges I'm sure we are all facing, whether in Palestine or in Sahara or in other movements. And history is full of movements that ended or changed, or at the end they become part of the elites. So all of these are challenges that we are facing. If you move, Max, to the second slide, please. So yeah, these are the let's say that I talked about this, the origin and history, as I explained in the past. And but if we move more to the next slide, please. Yeah, and also I talked about like the strategies and what tactics. I mean, what kind of tactics, what kind of actions, what kind of discourse, what kind of actions activists can use in order to achieve physical, tactical victories, to keep people mobilized. And what we found actually is, from what we are doing, is that how to make this occupation costly to Israel, how to solve the problem of the people. I mean, because you want to keep the legitimacy of the movement in the eyes of the people, and that's very important, because at the end it will become a show. There are different interests. So the most important priority is the problems of the locals, the problems of these communities, farmers who lost their fields, or they lost their houses, or they can't have access to their land. So you have to keep thinking in the problems of the locals. Then it will be easier to mobilize people. Then it will be easier to keep the legitimacy of the movements in the eyes of the followers, in the eyes of the locals who are facing the problems. And also, if maybe it will be like creativity and also to keep, I would say, within the frame of customs, traditions. These are something also keep the movement strong in the eyes of the locals, and this is what you want to keep in as activists, as leaders in the movement, to make it last and sustain the actions of the movement. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and also the movement, when we start also to build the capacity of the people, and because this is also important, because you want to protect the people, to build their capacity, to know their rights, to be able to stand in front of the Israeli forces, and you have to reach to work on advocacy and to work on networking. And yeah, I mean, this also may be something common between different movements from different backgrounds. If we move to another slide, please. Yeah, as I said, so non-violence, I would say, in a context like Palestine, and as I mentioned, in living in a context like Palestine, where there is a kind of divisions between the political parties. So what is the best to present yourself? Is it better to work under the umbrella of a political party? In some context, yes, you can tell me. But in the context of Palestine, I would say working in independently, without, like I'm here talking about a kind of cooperation, but in a way that you show your loyalty to the cause of the people more than to the political party, and the priority is to the cause. It's like not wearing your t-shirt over your jacket. I mean, your jacket should be the cause of the people, and to keep it grassroots, and to use all the tools and means. Now, for example, the discourse of human rights and international law. This is a kind of discourse that we are using against the Israeli violations. Now, joint struggle is another issue that we adopted in our movement when we work together with Israeli anti-Zionist, anti-occupation groups, and international solidarity. And the transnational solidarity is one of the pillars of what we call joint struggle, and also to create the shift within the Israeli society and the international community. And again, I hope creativity. For example, this woman that you are seeing in the photo lost two of her children, a boy and a girl, that were one of them were shot live on while in the demonstration, and it was recorded. And she decided that I will create hope from the tear gas canisters. She planted flowers in the tear gas canisters in order to bring hope instead of death, and non-violence instead of violence. And that is a powerful image as a creative action people are doing. And this woman is an example of the people who lost their family members during the non-violent protest in Belen village, for example, this one. If we go for the second one, maybe I will end with.
Before we move, Mahmoud, I think someone has raised the hand. I don't know if it's a question of something he was saying, or if it can wait until the end while we have the big discussion. Okay, maybe it was a mistake. Please, we can go on.
Yeah, because we are almost at the end. We want to go to the questions, but if you go to the last slide, or I think, yeah. So, I mean, for movements, in order to fly over the gap, over the barriers that occupation is creating, we have to achieve a kind of small victories that give hope to the people. And I would say popular resistance or nonviolent resistance by itself is a hope for people. And in order for people to believe in it, they must participate. They must take actions on the ground in order to feel their power. And I would say that we have to work hard in order to be able to see the people in the streets. And from my experience in the last 2 decades in nonviolent resistance, where this girl, tomorrow we are going to celebrate her birthday in a community demolished in the Jordan Valley. She's from Bil'in. Now she is 16 or 17 years old. So imagine when you see generations participated as children, and now they are youth leading the movement and seeing the achievements of nonviolent resistance. First, they do not see themselves as submitted victims, but they see themselves as strong victims. They see themselves are able to do something, because with nonviolent resistance, you are able to stand up, you are able to challenge, and you never defeated in nonviolent resistance. Not like other forms of resistance, where you either win or lose. And here, this is an example that we show. We are not yet liberating Palestine. We are not yet able to stop Israel from building settlements and so on. But we are building a new generation who are able to stand up for their rights in order to liberate Palestine. And if Golda Meir, the Prime Minister of Israel in the 60s and 70s, said that the old people will die and the new generation will forget, we are telling them that the new generation are more close to victory than before. I stop here. I leave the floor for questions and discussion for this issue. I hope that you catch all what I was trying to say. I'm sorry if something was not clear, or some points I jumped very fast on them. This is a century of conflict.
Yeah, thank you really much, Mahmoud. For me, it's been like very inspiring and very clear. Of course, we have room now for questions if somebody needs to clarify something, but it's been like a real nice and like wide presentation, like covering like as you said, a century of conflict. And so thank you very much. And we already have a couple of questions in the chat. So the first one comes from Mahlaja from Nova Sahara. Okay, and she's asking, I don't know if she wants to connect and do the question by herself, but if not, I can read it from the chat. Mahlaja?
Yes, she's asking about the normalization. Yeah, this point actually we skip it very quickly. Yeah, okay, but yes, we can talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, just for the other people, if somebody is not reading the chat, Mahlaja is asking about the normalization between some Arab countries with Israel, and also she's asking what is your position, Mahmoud, about the deal of the century? You've been talking a little bit of Trump's administration and position, but if you can like explain a little bit further, please.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Muhammad and Max, Mahmoud. I'm just read a message because I have a lot of voices in outside and I can't speak the question. Sorry, I shut for this. Thank you so much.
Don't worry, Mahlaha. I can read it. It's okay.
Thank you, Max.
no problem, Mahla. And it's yeah. Let's be open and frequent in this regarding Arab regimes. And I would say Trump make things on the table very clear, because all of this was happening under the table since the First World War. But this Trump administration put everything on the table. So who can imagine that 23 Arab countries are unable to win one war against Israel, which is a small country of like Palestine. So there is something wrong. There is something wrong between the Arab regimes and Israel. They are allies, I would say. Some of them are allies to Israel, not enemies. So the relationship is not a kind of enemy relationship, especially, for example, Palestinians were expelled from Jordan, from Syria, from Lebanon, or from many Arab countries. So the relation, in a way or another, was how to push Palestinians to accept the agreement, to accept any agreement with Israel. So I give you an example, Morocco, for example. There is a statue for King Hassan, I don't know which one, in Tel Aviv, for his great gifts to Israel. And they are saying that there is no relation. There are normalization with Arab countries on the level of the states since decades. But Trump make this clear to make the normalization more with the people. So with which countries they are making? In my mind and my definition, Israel is not a country, neither the Arab Emirates. They are companies. They are companies. These two countries are companies. So if you go to Emirates or to Tel Aviv, you see that it's all companies. It's based on neoliberal imperial economy. So there is no society by the meaning of a society. So it was the easiest to make this open agreement between Emirates and Bahrain and Israel as the Trump policy. But if you notice, where are the wars? Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Egypt, Tunisia. These countries have civil society, and history. And that's why they must be destroyed before having the normal relation with Israel, without solving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And sadly, when Emirates signed the agreement with Israel, 2 states, but the borders of Emirates are clear. What are the borders of Israel? Until now, no one knows what are the real borders of Israel. So you know what I mean? I mean, in a way, they blindly forced to do this from the Trump's administration to make this clear on the table. The deal of century is against any conflict resolution process, and we Palestinians Since that day, we cut the relationship with America. We cut the relation fully, and as a result, America closed the Palestinian embassy in America, which is a kind of representative office in the. And as a result, you know, like Trump recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and they transferred the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. At that day, more than 40 Palestinians were killed in the demonstrations when Trump transferred the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. At least, if the Arabs want to normalize with Israel, why not to end the occupation first? Why to give it for free for Israel? That's why you think that these regimes are not the people. By the way, all the Arab people are against this normalization process. Even Emirati people, even Bahraini people, even Saudi people. But the governments, they are not representing the people. Emirates, whenever there was no elections since the creation of Emirates, the same Bahrain, the same many Arab countries. So how come these regimes are representing the people? Look at Egypt, for example. Is the Sisi, this system, represent the Egyptian people? Never. That's why we are not, let's say, we know that these agreements born dead because they are not reflecting the voices of the people. They are reflecting the regimes. They are reflecting the willing of the regime, because the regime must have the protection from America. But at the same time, this divided the Arab countries, into two parties. The party that show that they can be loyal to Iran or can be loyal to the US and its allies. So in sum, I would say that all what is happening is a show from the Arab regimes about their real willing to have a relationship with Israel and to be allies with America. And this is the price that they are paying. This is the price they are paying as a result of these agreements. In 2004, as I said before, the Arab Summit agreed to normalize the relation with Israel only if Israel ends the occupation of Palestine according to the international law. So this is from Z to A, not from A to Z. Why to make things upside down? I mean, the way around. That's a failure, and I am sure this will end soon. And now the deal of century will not pass. And Biden even Biden will not accept it. Of course, maybe they will not retreat some of the actual steps that Trump did, like bringing back the embassy to Tel Aviv, but at least they will not support the Israeli policies towards Jerusalem, towards Area C, and all what they are doing. So in front of the resilience of the Palestinians, the deal of century failed. In front of the Arab awareness and commitment and determination to the Palestinian cause, this will, the normalization will fail. The same as there was like agreements between Jordan and Israel. Tell me, and Egypt also since 1979. But Israelis never been to Cairo as Israelis, because they know this relationship is between Israel and the regime, not the people. That's why I am not seeing it as a big deal, but I see that Trump make things clear, and we do not have hope from the Arab regimes to liberate Palestine. Even they put siege. Who is putting siege on Gaza? Israel and Egypt. Even Egypt more than Israel. So how come hope will come from the regimes? But I know Egyptian. They are ready to sacrifice their everything for Palestine. The same as many residents in the Arab countries. I hope I answered your question,
Maklaha. Thank you. Now we have, I think Ibrahim wanted to ask a question. Before he does, Ibrahim, you can make it in Spanish if you want, I can translate. Before, I just want to remind you that we have a questionnaire about the webinar that Sarah just added in the text. So after the session, I ask you, please, if you can enter and fill the questionnaire, okay? So to help us to improve. So Ibrahim? Okay, I can translate. He wants to thank you for the presentation and to say you that the Sahrawi people, as well as Argelian, will be with you until the day of the judgment. And he also adds that it is a shame that these two people so peaceful have been forced to go through this situation. He says that they know that Morocco state has been, as you were mentioning, with Israel. So his question is, Palestinian people has gone through a lot of suffer and human rights violations, and the wall, he says, is still quiet, and this is especially like shameful thinking of some Arab regimes. So he asked if there's a call for going back to armed struggle, or there is still hope in a peaceful solution. So this would be his question, I think. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, let's start from the point that in a way that occupied people has the right to use any strategy and any mean of resistance as guaranteed by the international law and by the United Nations, and that's one aspect. But people choose the best strategy, and of course within the Palestinian context and resistance, people use different methods of resistance. And for example, in Gaza, they are able to use armed resistance. And in the West Bank, where I am come from, we are using the non-violent or the popular resistance, as we call it, which is any mean you are able to involve people without using arms. Now, I do believe in that. I mean, I witnessed the second intifada, the first intifada, and now I am involved in the popular resistance, and I can see the difference. In our situation, let's say our understanding of popular resistance is different. Is different than even Gandhi, even Martin Luther King, even all the people who used popular nonviolent resistance. It's not pragmatic, it's not principled, it's different, it's a way of resistance that we are using. For example, throwing stones is popular resistance. Thus, I mean, it's a kind of pragmatic, principled, whatever. So, but I think in our situation, Israel wants us to use armed resistance, want us to be involved in violence. This is a kind of justification for their policies, for their attacks against Palestinians, because we do not have any strategic depth. I mean, they control everything. And also with the power asymmetric situation, with all the weapons they have, it's a kind of, they will use it against the Palestinians, and it will backlash on the Palestinians very much. And I can tell you, like during the wars on Gaza, during the second intifada, they use this against the Palestinians. Even the Palestinians have the right to use the armed resistance, but still Israel is happy that if Palestinians use violence, because they will justify their policies. They will justify building the wall. They will justify the segregation. They will justify controlling the land, controlling everything for military purposes. And that's what they want. And from practical experience, I mean, during the Second Intifada, really they killed people in a very brutal way, and in a way that it was a gift for them to use violence, especially in West Bank, where they are everywhere. I mean, they have very modern technology, they control everyone. So the best, I would say, strategy for such period of time is the popular resistance. But no one will say and condemn armed resistance. And this is why I'm saying popular resistance in Palestine is different. It's not based on condemnation of other kinds of resistance, but it is about practicing the popular resistance to show people models that they can trust and follow. It's not about starting from the beginning and sitting in a room to discuss nonviolent resistance or armed resistance. People, that's why, I mean, in a way that if you will bring Palestinians to deny the right of armed resistance, not denying the right of armed resistance is a form of nonviolent resistance. So in this logic, I would say, in a way, if United States or Israel or anyone told us you must condemn armed resistance, we will say no, even we will never use armed resistance. So this is how we understand nonviolent resistance or popular resistance.